Good morning and welcome to the Rule Development Workshop regarding Florida Administrative Code, Chapter 65G-14, Qualified Organizations and Waiver Support Coordination. My name is Nathan Koch. My title with the agency is Deputy General Counsel, and I will be presiding over today's workshop. This workshop is being recorded. Today is November 18th, 2020, and the time is 10:04 a.m. Eastern, and we are meeting online and over the phone. This workshop is being held to provide members of the public with the opportunity to give commentary and input on these rules. Specifically, the agency is seeking comments on the draft rule language that was provided in the Notice of Development. The Notice of Development with draft rule language was published on November 4th, 2020 in Volume 46, Issue Number 216 of the Florida Administrative Register, and is also posted on the agency's website. The purpose of these rules are to implement a portion of the recent statutory changes adopted by Chapter 2020-71 Laws of Florida. The agency realizes this is a paradigm shift for support coordination and that many of you have concerns about these changes. Many people from the agency are here today to listen to you and your concerns and suggested solutions. Rulemaking is a collaborative process between an agency and the public. The agency takes this partnership seriously and is here to listen to you. The agency has already received a few comments and changes have been made to the draft rules based on these comments that you will see at the next publication. In other words, your comments matter and this collaboration matters. The agency appreciates your involvement in this workshop today. Slide 2, please. Before we begin, I would like to go through a few simple instructions that will help this rule workshop proceed smoothly today. After my opening remarks, we will have the agency workshop representatives introduce themselves, and then we will open the floor for public commentary on the rules. At the time of registration, you were each asked if you wish to speak at this workshop. Based on the registration, we have 70 speakers today. When we receive public comment, we will start with these speakers. If you wish to speak at this workshop but did not register to speak, then please use the raise your hand feature in the webinar controls and wait patiently to be called on. Or you may wish to type your question in the questions box of the webinar controls. We will take the additional speakers and messages as time permits. We ask that you limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. In the interest of time, if you want to provide commentary that mirrors commentary provided previously, you could just let us know that you agree with the previous comments and clarify which comments you specifically agree with. The agency is interested in your input on the rules that will implement the agency's statutory requirements in a way that meets the needs of our clients and providers. Our goal today is to listen to your feedback regarding what concerns and ideas you have for these rules. Following the workshop, the agency will be accepting written comments until Friday, November 20th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can email your written comments to Danielle Thompson at danielle.thompson@apdcares.org. The spelling is DANIELE_THOMPSON @apdcares.org. Ms. Thompson's email address can also be found in the Notice of Rule Development. One moment. We're just having a little technical difficulties. I'm going to get the presentation up on the screen. Okay. Now I'd like to have each agency representative introduce herself and provide their title for the record. We can begin with Lynn Dahl.
Lynn Dahl, Chief of Provider Supports. Good morning.
Ms. Dahl, if you would take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me, Nathan? Lynn Dahl, Chief of Provider Supports.
And next is Claire Galise.
Good morning, this is Claire. I'm a Senior Human Services Program Manager under the Bureau of Provider Support.
And last is Megan Torres.
Good morning, everyone. This is Megan Torres. I am a Program Administrator in Operations over our quality improvement.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started with any public comments. Before providing us your comments, please ensure that your name and affiliation is stated on the record, if any. Our first speaker today is Laura Mahusky with Support Coordination Association of Florida. And following Ms. Mahusky is Charlotte Colbert with Colbert Adjusting. So one moment, Ms. Mahusky, while I unmute your line. All right, Ms. Mahusky, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you may proceed.
Okay, nobody wants to be first. Man, I thought I was sure gonna be at the end of the line. I'm Laura Mahesky, and I'm the chair of Support Coordination Association of Florida, SCAF. 77 speakers. I'm sure everyone is going to address some of the concerns that are on my list. So I think I'm going to start with the fact that I'm just very concerned, well, not just myself, but the SCAF board is very concerned about the fact that it is November the 18th, and we're just now at the workshop talking about the guidelines. Coordinators are anxious, wanting to know the direction they need to be moving into, yet ROMs are saying don't submit applications at this time. So the biggest concern at this point, I would feel, is the fact that I'm not sure we're going to be able to implement this change by July 1st of 2021. And what does this look like, especially for our consumers who also need to have some direction on what is happening with support coordination. Between the pandemic and the uncertainty of support coordination, I just can't stress to you the amount of stress this has put on support coordinators as well as the consumers that they serve. There is such concern on what will happen with cases, how the transition is supposed to go. Will this be a smooth transition? What will happen during the 90 days that coordinators are submitting their application, and what happens to the consumers that they're serving? I guess at this point, I'm stressing to you the concern of the transition and what that will look like. What I hope to see is across the board, all of your ROMs.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Yeah.
Hello? Am
You
I
may
good now?
continue.
What I'd like to see is a universal across the board with your ROM submitting the same information to all coordinators. That's not happening right now. And what happens in one region is not happening in another region. And ROMs are not sending out the same information to coordinators. And coordinators are speaking. So my hope is that we have a smooth transition from this, and that you start sending out more information so that we can move forward. And that's all at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Mosky. All right. Next, we will move to Charlotte Colbert, and after Ms. Colbert is Janet Batet with Support Champions LLC, Agora Sport and Consulting Services. One moment. Ms. Colbert, your line is unmuted on my end. If you would please take yourself off mute, you could provide comment. Charlotte Colbert, you are unmuted on my end. If you would please take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on to Janet Batet. One moment, Janet, while I unmute your line. Ms. Batet, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Ms. Batet, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next commenter is Lee West, who is a waiver support coordinator. One moment. Lee West, you are.
Yes, good morning. I'm actually going to second everything that Laura said. We are all anxious to find out what our futures look like. And dragging this on is creating so much more stress than we already have in our lives. I'm just hoping that someone can hear our cries for help in getting some resolution on futures for everyone. I doubt seriously the transition can be as smooth as we'd like. And I'd like to see also what that looks like in our futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. West. Our next commenter is Rachel Brown. One moment, Rachel. Ms. Brown, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And after Ms. Brown, we will hear comment from Wendy Voss. Ms. Brown, if you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Ms. Voss, you are unmuted. You can provide your comment. Ms. Voss, it looks like you're unmuted. Go ahead and provide your comment. And Ms. Voss, you may be having some technical difficulties. We'll come back to you because you are unmuted. Next, we will go to Bradley Hunt with Exceptional Partners Incorporated. Bradley, you are unmuted. If you would provide your comment.
Good, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. There are several references. Let me just try to get to this. Under 65G-14.002, subparagraph 3C, refers to the 6 monthly meetings that owners, managers, supervisors must attend. My question is, does this refer to the current procedure with the regional support coordination meetings, or is that going to be a separate meeting? We need some clarification on that. On agency oversight, 65G-14.003, subparagraph 1, subparagraph A. There's some language in there which refers to flirtations and romantic behavior on the part of the support coordinator. Those are not defined, seems to be vague and open to interpretation. And so we would like to see some clarification on that or how that will be operationalized. I would hate for support coordinators to be accused of something by a disgruntled provider or family member when it's a vague reference to a behavior for something like that. There's references in the proposal, several places, on competency-based assessment and for level 1 training and level 2 training. So in this webinar, is it possible that we could hear a description from someone from APD on how this new system will work for that training, and who will provide that training, and what we are supposed to do if that training or that competency-based assessment are not ready July 1? How do we comply with this rule if APD is not ready? Under the Code of Ethics, section 9, subparagraph E and F refers to medical necessity. It appears that under the proposed rule that support coordinators will be functioning as the front gate to determining which services are medically necessary, and is not even discussed as a collaborative process with the consumers, providers, or APD. We would like to see some proposed language or on this being a collaborative process. For instance, some services clearly address quality of life and not a more clearly defined medical necessity, such as for private duty nursing or personal care when parents are working. We need some clarification on how we are to proceed with determining what's medically necessary, other than the handbook for those services that have a softer determination. On the mentoring program that's described, so paragraph 2, there's a strong concern about the mentee not carrying their own caseload. Quite frankly, this won't work. The support coordinator that's being trained needs to get familiar with their consumers. They can be followed, they can begin interacting with those folks. That also provides a real hardship on the agency. On 65G 14.0043, when it discusses the mentoring, also subparagraph B3, comprehensive needs assessment refers to that. Is that the QSI, or the if APD changes the proposed or changes the needs assessment in the future, is that what they're referring to on that? We need some clarification on that. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Ms.
Nathan,
Dalton,
if I could speak to the questions that Brad raised. And I'll try to go through these, Brad. This is Lynn. Yes, the 6 meetings with APD is referring to the support coordination monthly meetings that are held at the regional office. You asked for some clarification on the level 1 and level 2 trainings that are referenced in the competency-based assessments. The proposals in the rule are that the level 1 training will replace what is now considered statewide WSC pre-service training. That will be an online training through Train Florida. Following that online training, there will be a competency-based assessment that will be completed by the support coordinators. The level 2 training is what is now referred to as region-specific training. That will continue to be an in-person training at the regional office as it is now, and will be followed by a competency-based assessment that will be completed at the end of the region-specific training. The competency needs assessment is referring to the agency's assessment, which is currently the QSI. If you have any, you would also ask questions about the mentoring program and concerns about the mentee not being able to carry a caseload. So any suggested language that you want to propose to make some modifications, and that would be appreciated, as well as any proposed language to the current requirements for the medical necessity reviews. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Hunt. Do you have any changes to the language itself, any proposed changes, Mr. Hunt? And you're self-muted.
I will be glad to work on some changes and submit those.
Thank you. Okay, next we will move to Ryan Chandler with Association of Support Agencies, and following Mr. Chandler is Lazina Joyner. 1 second, Mr. Chandler. Mr. Chandler, you are self-muted. Okay, you can provide your comment.
Hi, this is Ryan Chandler representing the Association of Support Coordination Agencies. And our first concern was in section 65G-14.002, requiring each qualified organization to submit a code of ethics. We would recommend that APD provide a code of ethics that would be consistent for all agencies. Having numerous versions lends toward inconsistent provision of the code of ethics that would guide our support coordination service delivery. Section 65G-14.002 also, the agency will review and approve or deny complete applications within 90 days of receipt, and then the agency will close incomplete applications. We recommend changing this to 60 days, as 90 days is too long, and add that the agency has 30 days to respond to include all changes or questions which require a response. In 65G-14.0042, disciplinary process, changing the wording in the document from disciplinary process to quality improvement or performance improvement plan. And our area of most concern also mirrors what a few other Mr. Hunt suggested, but in section 65G-14.0043, the mentoring program, mentees are not authorized to carry their own independent caseloads. This section indicates that the mentoring period is for 90 days, while the current handbook states that support coordinators in an agency cannot carry over the caseload of 43 for more than 60 days. If the mentoring section does not allow assignment for 90 days, then these two sections of the handbook would be contradictory. The process of hiring a support coordinator takes well more than 60 days, and agencies would have no way to meet the current requirement of not having a new support coordinator assuming cases. We cannot provide mentoring during the time we can provide mentoring during the time a new support coordinator has a caseload, and the mentoring would be specific to the mentee's caseload. There is also, as stated before, the issue of funding to have someone on board for 90 days, but not generating any income. And this is not something that can be supported under the current rates. And in the same section, what is the definition of independent caseloads? Does this imply that the new support coordinator can conduct support coordination services for their projected caseload, but under the direct supervision of a mentor and/or supervisor? And one other suggestion in that section, allow the supervisors to be mentors as well and arrange with other experienced support coordinators on staff the mentee to be involved in support plans, coordinating services. This would allow for mentors to observe and assist other support coordinators on staff to become familiar with a wide variety of individuals and the approach to services delivery by more than just one support coordinator. This would include how to conduct support plan meetings, interact with providers, respond properly to individuals and family members. We have a few other concerns, but we will be submitting those in writing by Friday at 5. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Chandler.
Mr. Chandler, this is Lynn Daw. Just if I could comment on a couple of your questions and suggestions. One of yours was that the agency provide a template for the Code of Ethics, and in fact, we are going to be doing that, as well as a template for the mentoring program, and also policies and procedures that may be used by qualified organizations if you choose to use those. That may help with the concern about the expediency of getting the applications in and reviewed and approved. We also would appreciate any suggested language changes that you have relative to the mentoring program. We do have in the proposed rule that if the mentor does not have someone on his or her caseload that needs some of those activities for the mentee to shadow, that they can be reviewed by other supervisors. And the qualified organizations are not limited to having one designated mentor. You can designate more than one of your supervisors as a mentor for your new support coordinators. So any draft language changes that you would like to make, we'd certainly welcome those.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, we'll move to Lazina Joyner with Joyful Support Services Incorporated. And after Ms. Joyner, we'll move to Rachel Brown, who's a waiver support coordinator. So Ms. Joyner, you are unmuted.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you may proceed.
Okay. My comments are basically just wanting to know how is the support coordinator going to be doing level 1 and 2 competency training? Is that going to be on the Florida Train website or direct? And is that going to come up soon? And then the other comment is, like the association representative said, if some of the support coordinators are not doing the training now, how is this going to be in effect June coming up next year? It's not that far away. It's only 6 months away. So are we going to have an extended period of time for this to occur? And that's basically my comments. Those are some of the questions I have that are coming down. Okay.
Hi, Nathan, this is Lynn again. If you're referring to the question was referring to the competency-based assessment following the levels of training. Yes, the level 1 training, which will be online in Train Florida, will have the competency-based assessment as part of that process. Again, with the level 2 training, which now you know as region-specific training, that assessment will be completed at the end of the level 2 training while you're at the regional office. So those are the two competency assessments that are referred to in the draft rule. The agency is finalizing both those assessments as well as those trainings. They're in their final stages at this point, so that they will be available at that point that we go live. Thank you.
This is Nathan.
If I could also add, there is a workshop next week on the training rule that does speak in more detail about these changes in the training.
Thank you, Lynn. We will move to our next speaker, which is Rachel Brown, who's a waiver support coordinator. And after Ms. Brown will be Patricia Garcia Montes. Rachel Brown, you are self-muted if you take yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you for coming back to me. I was disconnected, so I had to come back in. But one of the questions that I do want to ask, and I don't know if it has been asked, if there is going to be an increase in the coordination rate, being that individuals now or agencies, agency heads are taking on the responsibility of paying out staff. So has that been determined whether or not there will be an agency increase?
Good morning, Ms. Brown. This is Lynn. At this point, there is no proposed rate increase for support coordination as a service.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next, we will move to Patricia Garcia Montes and after her is Athea Chin with Cross County Support Services Incorporated. One moment, Ms. Garcias. Ms. Garcia Montes, you may proceed. Oh, looks like you are self-muted. There you go. Okay, looks like you do not want to speak. We will move on. Our next speaker is Althea Chin with Cross County Support Services Incorporated. One moment while I take you off mute. All right, Althea Chin, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Althea Chin, if you just take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next speaker is Gulande Alajusta with Life Again. Gulande, you are off mute.
Hi, how are you? My name is Galandi Abdujasti, and I just wanted to voice my opinion. I'm a support coordinator, and I'm also an agency owner. I have been a support coordinator since 2014, and I'm looking at these rules, and I'm seeing that all these rules are going to cause an agency to fail. Not only that, one of the rules is like the agency head, I understand, can't have a full caseload. And you want us to take on 4 or more on our agency. Currently, I only have 1 extra support coordinator, and that's my backup. And it's just the 2 of us. And if I take on 2 more support coordinators, and like if I get like senior support coordinators that have been in the field for so long, how can the agency owner survive by going down on their caseload to manage other support coordinators, and especially seniors that have been who had full caseloads for a long period of time, and then we tell them to join our agency and they have to get a pay cut. It's like basically when you join the company, you're supposed to move up the ladder, and you've been a support coordinator for so many years, and you're being forced to join an agency. The individual is going to have to be forced to join an agency, and then they have to take a pay cut out of their caseload in order for the agency to survive, because the individual rate and agency rates are the same. So how would the support coordinator agency able to support itself in order to supervise all the other support coordinators?
Yes, this is Linda. If I could speak to that, the requirement to have a minimum of 4 support coordinators to be considered a qualified organization is in the Florida statutes as a minimum requirement of 4. That's why that requirement is indicated in the draft rule.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Alajuste. Next, we will move on to Carlos Robel with Advanced Coordination Incorporated. And following Mr. Robel will be Judy Holliday with Holiday Quality Care Services Incorporated. Mr. Robel, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute.
Yes, good morning. I have no, so at this point, I have no question for you. I just want to remain listening to the other folks.
Thank you, Mr. Robel. We will move on. Next, we will move to Judy Holliday. Ms. Holliday, you are self-muted. And after Ms. Holliday, we will move on to Catherine Klim. Ms. Holliday, if you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Judy Holliday, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on to Catherine Klim, who's a solo support coordinator. And after Ms. Klim, we will move on to Sonia McFarland. One moment. Ms. Klim, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Ms. Klim, I see you did submit a question. If you do want to provide oral comment, you can take yourself off mute. If not, we will move on. Okay. We will move on to Sonia McFarland with SGM Support, and after Ms. McFarland will be Sharon Mitchell. One moment. Sonia McFarland, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute. Sonia McFarland, you are self-muted. If you'd like to provide comment, please take yourself off mute. Okay, we will move on. Next is Sharon Mitchell, who's a waiver support coordinator. And Ms. Mitchell, you are unmuted. You may speak.
Good morning. Yes, I'm a solo waiver support coordinator, and I'm in Broward County, Southeast region, and I would like to know, is there any opportunity or venue where collectively the support coordinators and agencies and even APD request an extension to the start date, which is highly unreasonable considering all the setbacks of the COVID, as was mentioned earlier, and so that we can do this in a more efficient manner as opposed to hastily and hurriedly. And, you know, it's not fair to our clients as well as to us, the support coordinators, or even APD staff. You know, it's not fair to any of us. Is there any venue or anyone that can address that issue? Thank you.
This is Lynn Dahl. At this point, the effective date, implementation date is July 1st of 2021. I did want to speak to your comment as well as the comments of Laura's initially in terms of things that the agency is doing at this point. We do have quite a few documents already developed ready for the applications. We're working with the regions currently to do some training for the provider enrollment staff in anticipation of the applications being received. As I mentioned earlier, we also are finalizing some templates that can be used through the application process. And we also are including a specific section on the APD website for the qualified organizations, which will include frequently asked questions. It was important for us to get feedback from you guys today as we're finalizing those documents, to hear back from you about what your proposed changes were and concerns were with what we had in the draft rule. We will be posting information about when the applications can begin being received by the agency. We anticipate that to be, very shortly. We are also working with the regions, and we'll be having regular topics to be discussed at the monthly support coordination meetings to assist you guys through the application process. So there's a lot of activities that are going on internally to prepare for what we know will be quite an extensive workload for all of us to make sure that we are in compliance with this rule and this deadline. And so we look forward to working collaboratively with you guys. And I did want to say that we do understand that this is certainly a time of uncertainty for support coordinators, whether you're a solo support coordinator or whether you're an agency right now. And we want to be sensitive to those concerns that you have. And so that's why this workshop is so important, to get feedback from you in terms of those things that you feel like in the draft rule cause you the greatest amount of consternation. And more importantly, to get some suggestions from you about how we can change some of that draft rule language to address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speaker will be George Font with A Partnership for Progress. And after Mr. Font will be Renee Edwards, who's a solo waiver support coordinator. Mr. Font, you are unmuted. It looks like you are, okay, you may proceed. And Mr. Font, you are unmuted, but we can't hear you. And Mr. Font, we still can't hear you. You are unmuted. What we can do is try to come back to you. Maybe you have a microphone issue and you get that resolved. Next, we will move to Renee Edwards. And after Ms. Edwards will be Nicole Dawkins with Cornerstone Supports and Counseling LLC. One moment, Renee. All right, Ms. Edwards, you are unmuted.
Good morning. I'm Renee Edwards. I'm a solo provider in Central Region. I have no question at this time. I will just echo the same concerns that have already been shared by other coordinators regarding timelines and specifics regarding policy and procedure. I also want to emphasize the fact that inconsistencies throughout the state, which hold up one area from another, will also be relevant when it comes to the July 1 timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. And next we'll have Nicole Dawkins. After Ms. Dawkins, we'll have Bevan Goodman, who's a waiver support coordinator. So Ms. Dawkins, you are unmuted.
Good morning. Okay. My name is Nicole Dawkins. I'm an agency owner with Cornerstone Supports and Consulting. And like the others have said, I think most of my concerns have already been brought up, with the exception of I do want to home in on provider enrollment processing time. As APD, as you are putting your things together and you're doing the inter-office work, take a look at the processing time for provider enrollment. It's right now it's long, and on average, adding a new WSC ranges from 5 months to 10 months, at least in my area. Is it possible, if they are not able to take that load, that funding can be approved, even a temporary increase in staffing for the next several months, just to help with getting those applications in, especially for those solos who are trying to come together to be one agency. They may have questions, they may need to send emails and get an email back within a week, as opposed to 2 weeks, as opposed to a month, just because of I'm sure just a large amount of caseload. If APD can take a look at that, because provider enrollment right now is going to become a critical point for these new agencies that are coming aboard. Also, APD, you've praised us on what we've done, and I thank you that you've praised us on the work that we've done over the years and all the different changes, the different types of support, even when we've recommended increases for other providers, that has been supported as well. When it's time for us to go to the budget, and I know this is not you specifically that makes these rules, but you are a strong voice when you do go to legislation. Fight for us. The funding that we're getting right now, especially with what we're about to do, it really actually can't be done on what we have. So I'm asking for you to fight for us. If you truly believe how critical this service is, come together for us when it's time to look at rates, when it's time to look at, solo versus agency and all those different things. Remember us, because the mental health of the support coordinators is paramount to quality of services. Mental health is so important. And when you have coordinators going through what they're going through now, and then going to the family homes that we're trying to work with medically fragile adults and children, parents, people losing their lives, all the different things that we're involved with, especially that I've talked to with other colleagues like me who have been in the business over 15 years. You have to be strong mentally to do this. Anything you can do to help us, any fight that you can do to help us fight, please do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dawkins, and really great suggestions about the provider enrollment staff. And that is actually something that we are looking at, is how to structure things. We understand that this is going to be, an added workload with the number of qualified organizations that will need to get enrolled, and how we can best utilize the existing staff we have or any other options we have to get some additional staff support during that process. We are also going to set up individual email boxes for each region so that those qualified organization applications are going to designated staff within the regions to make sure that those are given a priority in terms of enrollment activities that happen. So I appreciate your comments very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, we will move to Bevan Goodman, who's a waiver support coordinator, and after Bevan will be Marlene Canzales with Gemma Services Incorporated. So Bevan Goodman, you are unmuted. If you'd provide your comment. Bevan Goodman, appears you might be on self-mute. If you could take yourself off mute, you can provide your comment. Bevan Goodman, it appears you're on mute. If you could take yourself off. Okay, we will move on. Our next speaker is Marlene Canzales with Gemma Services Incorporated, and after Ms. Canzales will be Valencia Carswell. So Marlene, one moment. Marlene, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Marlene, it looks like you're still self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next speaker is Valencia Carswell with Val Carswell Support Coordination, and after Ms. Carswell will be Lourdes Cazola. One moment. Ms. Carswell, you're unmuted.
Yes.
You're unmuted, Ms. Carswell. You may proceed.
Good morning. My name is Val Carswell. I'm an independent support coordinator, and I have just two questions. The first one is I'm a little bit confused about training. Are the current support coordinators going to be grandfathered in with their training, or as when they join these qualified agencies, are they going to have to take some of the new trainings that are required? And my second question is, do you all plan to have any firm deadlines as to when this information from the qualified organizations are to be submitted? I think that we need, as you all are developing your templates and what we're going to be doing, the deadlines for when agencies should be sending stuff in. Do you all have any plans to send out deadlines at all?
Ms. Carswell, thank you for those great questions. Yes, in terms of the training for existing support coordinators, once the training rule is finalized, the existing support coordinators will need to all complete what we will be referring to again as level 1 training, which is the online training, as well as completing the competency assessment that is associated with that. Existing support coordinators, whether you work for an agency or whether you're a solo support coordinator, will not be required to complete the level 2 training, which is what you now know as region-specific training. That will only be a requirement for new support coordinators that are hired that are not currently a support coordination through the Medicaid waiver program. In terms of the deadlines to be submitted, yes, when we do provide the opportunity for qualified organizations to submit the applications, contained within that, as it is currently, there will be deadlines for getting a complete application in to the region. And again, with the assistance of the templates that we'll be providing for some of those policies and procedures, the ethical standards and mentoring program, as well as there has been an adjustment to the application document itself, which more clearly lays out the specific documents that will need to be submitted with the application. We believe that will make it more clear. We also are developing what are referred to as toolkits for qualified organizations, which will lay out specifically what documents you need to provide, as well as an additional document on Medicaid and any requirements for getting a new Medicaid number. And it really looks at the scenario that you're currently in, whether you're a solo support coordinator starting a qualified organization, or whether you're a solo support coordinator joining a qualified organization, if you're an agency that is wanting to become a qualified organization, or if you're an employee that's working for an agency who's going to be part of a qualified organization. All of that will be laid out in a toolkit, which will give additional guidance to support coordinators as you're going through the application process. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Next, we will move to Lourdes Cazzola with Progressive Life Homemaker and Companion Incorporated. And after Ms. Cazzola will be Glenda Shepard. Ms. Cazzola, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you can provide your comment.
Good morning. My name is Lourdes Cazzola. I'm a provider from Progressive Life Homemaker and Companion. And I just want to be updated with all that you are talking about. I just want to be informed of everything that is happening with the new organization and the support coordination. So I have no question, just listen.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to Glenda Shepard with Bilingual Supports Incorporated. One moment, Ms. Shepard. And Ms. Shepard, you are off mute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good morning. Most of my questions and concerns have been addressed, so I just have one more to add, and it's regarding the wording in the rule that refers to anyone who works for an agency as an employee, as opposed to either an employee or a 1099 contractor. I'm not sure if workers definitely must be an employee, and if you have an answer for that, if you can please speak to that. My concern is especially for existing support coordinators who are considering going under an agency. They would want to keep as close to the rate that they are currently getting as possible. I've spoken to quite a few support coordinators, and this is a big concern. And for many, it's a deciding factor, financially speaking, whether or not some of them will be able to continue as support coordinators. So if you have anything that you can speak to that on.
Good morning. The draft rule language is really silent on that issue of requirements to be an employee versus a 1099. We would welcome any comments or suggestions that you have in that regard.
I would definitely suggest to keep that optional as opposed.
Ms.
to
Shepherd.
making it a definite that people must be employee. Can you hear me?
Ms. Shepherd, your mic went out
Hello?
briefly. Restate.
I'm sorry about that. I was just proposing that it would remain optional so that we continue to have an option to pay workers as a 1099 contractor, and that they would count as one of the 4 minimum workers under a qualified organization.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Next, we will move to Majorie Evans with Broward Children's Center. And after Ms. Evans is Melissa Lindsay. One moment, Ms. Evans. It appears Ms. Evans has dropped off the call. So next we will move to Melissa Lindsay with Lindsay Advocacy Team. And it looks like Ms. Lindsay is also off the call. Next, we will move to Matt Adekima, who's a solo provider. Mr. Adekima, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Matt Adekimi, you are self-muted. If you would just take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next commenter is Estelle Marshall with MJ Guiding Others, LLC. And after Ms. Marshall will be Roy Ann Smith. Estelle Marshall, you are now unmuted. Ms. Marshall? Looks like you've been away from your screen, so we will move on. Our next speaker is Roy Ann Smith with Harris Support Services Incorporated. Roy Ann, if you would take yourself off of mute, you could provide your comment. And Roy Ann Smith, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. And our next speaker is Darlene Becker, who's a waiver support coordinator. And after Ms. Becker will be Niza Hernandez. Ms. Becker, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Darlene Becker, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next speaker will be Niza Hernandez with Coordinating Solutions Incorporated. And after Ms. Hernandez will be Pedro Valdez, who's a support coordinator. So Niza Hernandez, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute. Niza Hernandez, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. All right, we will move on. Our next speaker is Pedro Valdez, who is a waiver support coordinator. Mr. Valdez, if you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Mr. Valdez, you are on self-mute. If you would take yourself off, you could provide your comment. All right, our next speaker is Roberto Pyre with Advanced Support Coordination Services. It does not appear, Mr. Pyre, that you have a microphone. I did see that you did type in a questions in the questions pane, but there's no icon for a microphone. So later we could perhaps address your written question. And we will move on. Our next speaker is Evelyn Cancheo with Agape C&C Incorporated. And after Ms. Cancheo will be Nancy Collin with NA Collin Incorporated. So one moment, Evelyn Cancheo. Ms. Cancheo, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Ms. Cancheo, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. All right, we will move on. Our next speaker is Joanne Pratchett with United Ways of Life Incorporated. Following Ms. Pratchett will be Regina Padgett. So Ms. Pratchett, one moment. Ms. Pratchett, you are self-muted. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Ms. Pratchett, it does appear that you have been away from your computer screen. So we will move on to Regina Padgett with Support Unlimited Incorporated. So Ms. Padgett, you are unmuted.
Okay, hello. Hi to everyone. I just had a couple questions. Many of the individuals that came before me already asked a couple questions that I had. But I wanted to see if I can kind of go back to some of them because I wanted to get further understanding. When it comes to the employee and the word employee, is there some way to get a definition as to how it is meant in this proposal, this rule? Because sometimes in the handbook it says employee for agencies, but then we're still able to have contract workers. So I just wanted to see if we could get clarity on that. And I haven't heard this mentioned yet, but as it pertains to section 65G 13.005 disciplinary action, and the violation offenses and the fees. And I know we've talked about the cost of doing business and the changes that's going to incorporate for us as agencies, but all other service providers have a different rate for agencies and we have a different rate for solos. Unfortunately, WSCs have not been afforded that. So even with the changes that are being proposed, this is going to actually cause a hardship on agencies if it isn't addressed. So if that's something that perhaps we might be able to write to our legislators or send some information over to APD or whoever is addressing this rulemaking, because that's something that's seriously going to affect support coordinators adversely even those that are coming to agencies that are reducing their rates for their services, it will reduce it even more if they have to become employees. And then on top of that, you're adding penalties for the monitoring process that we've had in place. And so I just wanted to ask, when it comes to implementing offenses and rates and fees, was there some type of system that you all put in place for the fees that you listed here? And for the offenses, the first offenses, why is there a fee? Why wouldn't there just be a corrective action plan? Something that has to be addressed, because it kind of looks like support coordinators are being penalized versus having quality assurance type feedback. That's what it's coming across when you look at the fees. And I'm surprised we already talked about it yet. But these fees are quite great. And if we already have a low rate, we can't manage those type of fees. So I was just trying to find out what the whole purpose of that was for. When it comes to the trainings, I heard Ms. Lane, she clarified what the level 1 training is and what the level 2, and that level 1, which is a statewide training, would be on Training Florida. I would like to ask, is it possible for the level 2 training to be on Training Florida so that we can avoid any delays that we are faced with now? We're trying to get staffing into training, and there's always a delay because it's not scheduled, or we have to wait on one to be scheduled, and then that also delays us getting staff or support coordinators on board. The process for onboarding really is a time experience. It takes a long time to get support coordinators on board when it comes to training. So is there any way for that training, those trainings, to just be on Training Florida so that we can avoid that delay? Also, I had a question about mentee, and it seems like you all have addressed that, because for a mentee to come into an agency and not have a caseload, that really is not training them properly for them to be able to manage and be trained properly, because they need to know the individuals that they're working with, and they can do that alongside with their supervisor or a mentor that's assisting them. And then the other thing with that is there's a cost difference. So if we're looking to hire on a support coordinator and the first several months of their training is not generating any revenue, then that means the agency is going to be in the negative. And I don't think anybody believes that a business plan works like that. So if you could please look at addressing the cost as it occurs for support coordination for agencies, bringing on mentees, bringing on the new support coordinators into the process of qualified agencies.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Paget. Let's see if the agency has any response.
Ms. Paget, I'm sorry, this is Linda. I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of difficulty in understanding what your comments were. I believe you were asking some questions about the sanctions that are listed in the proposed rule. And those sanctions give guidelines as to what the potential penalties might be. And of course, if you read the draft rule language, it also refers to mitigating factors that might have resulted in those occurring. If I could suggest, because it was difficult, we were hearing a little bit of a muffled noise. If you could possibly submit your comments in writing, I just want to make sure that we're capturing all of your feedback and concerns. That would be appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. We will move on to Roberto Pyre with Advanced Support Coordination Services. And after Mr. Pyre, will be Tracy Davis, who's a waiver support coordinator. So one moment, Mr. Pyre.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You may proceed.
Okay, my name is Roberto Pide. I'm the owner of Advanced Support Coordination Services, and I have listened to everything that you're saying. I imagine that you're giving us input for the proposal rules as a purpose of the workshops. Okay, but I wanted to find out exactly what are penalties about support coordination in the draft listed. You show some penalty for support coordinations. I know we have to be a qualified agency. We have to comply with the rules. I know we got to comply with the Medicaid waiver and everything, but I wonder how an agency with 4, 6, 8, 10 coordinators could pay $5,000 penalty for a mistake. That's my comment. That's what I think. I don't. Is any answer to that feedback?
Good morning, Mr. Pyre. This is Linda again. If you look at in the proposed rule in the penalties, it gives the indications of what may be the amount. Again, it's also looking at mitigating factors that may play into what any penalty might ultimately be, looking at whether the qualified organization has addressed deficiencies as they have occurred. Have they worked with the support coordinators to make sure they understand what their responsibilities are? Have they provided the necessary oversight to the support coordinator? And also look into the validity of what the particular complaints are. So I would just suggest that you look at that language. And if you have any suggested changes, we would certainly welcome those recommendations.
And Mr. Pyre, did you have any suggested changes?
No, thank you very much. I will look into the whole draft. I know it's a draft, it's not final yet, but I will look very detailed on it. I will print it and find out what I need to know. I need to be like everybody else on the same page. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we will move to Tracy Davis, and after Tracy Davis will be Patty Rinden. Ms. Davis, you are self-muted. If you'd like to provide comment, please take yourself off mute. And Ms. Davis, you are self-muted. If you'd like to provide comment, please take yourself off mute. And we will move on. Next, we have Patty Rinden with the Columbus Group. Ms. Rinden, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you can provide your comment.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Patty Rinden, and I'm with the Columbus organization. I know there's a lot of new changes that are coming our way, and I know it's difficult for both the agency and coordinators across the state of Florida. So I do appreciate your time and energy, and sincerely appreciate the time you're taking this morning to listen to all of our comments and concerns. I'm going to highlight some of the higher different ones, and then I will put into writing the remainder of my comments. First of all, in 65G 14.002 subsection 2, we would request that the application request for multiple regions, and therefore only having one med waiver service agreement for the entire state if an agency is serving in multiple regions of the state. With iConnect now, there's no need for, we're doing individual applications for each individual region and hoping we can do one application statewide and then have med waiver agreements statewide. Also in subsection 4, I'm going to reiterate the concept of the 90 days for the application to be reviewed. That process is a conflict in it there with our SARF and the mentoring process. So if we don't have an approved application, we then cannot generate a SARF form, therefore not allowing for the mentoring process from the begin date of hire, which acknowledges they must be entering case notes and SANS and working in iConnect, but they can't have that without an approved application. And so all of it, those two languages are conflicting within each other. And that was 65G-14-0043 subsection A and B. In sub 65G-14.003, it asks for an invitation satisfaction survey to be held in the month of August. It would be our request that we have the language be removed from a specific month to the word annual in order for satisfaction surveys to be out based upon the timing of that individual agency and how it relates to their own self-assessment they're completing within their annual time frame. In 65G-14.004, subsection 3, subsection B, it states that they need a Medicaid provider number. However, we can't have a Medicaid provider number on the application if we are unable to put the application in to get the provider listing to complete the ACA application to get a provider number. So there's some conflicting languages between those two processes. In subsection 5, where it says if there's a vacancy for over 30 days, that we would notify the APD, our regional agent area, in where we would ask that that would be moved to 60 days because of the fact that it would require, at least a 30-day turnaround to be able to hire and properly a staff with the interview process, the job listing, etc. And give us an opportunity to give, we are not in the position of giving an opportunity to give the details of whether somebody was voluntary or, involuntarily removed from that position. So we would change the language to say, instead of the reasons for the involuntary, but just to be able to report to APD whether it was voluntary or it was not voluntary or it was involuntary. And then in 65G 14-0.0041, in subsection 9, one of the code of ethics that we would like the language change into is that it says that it would be a violation by the WSD assisting with the consumer satisfaction. I would like to see a little more detail in allowing them to at least read the questions or provide assistance for some individuals that do not have any family members to assist in the completion of that. And then also in 65G 14-003, the CDC mentoring include requirements identified in section 3, if applicable for section 5 of this rule. I would change that to say if they're going through the monitoring process, are you trying to say that they're needing to do the monitoring process again once they become CDC certified, or are they reviewing it at the same time? Because the way in which the language says it would be redundant to be doing it twice. No individual waiver support coordinator is doing just CDC. They're always doing a combination, and we do not choose the individuals we serve. So we would want the mentoring process to be done at the same time. And then if someone does go on CDC, that they would have to show demonstration of training during that time, but not fully 3 months. I thank you for the opportunity to provide those comments.
Thanks, Patty. And you said that you are going to submit those comments in writing.
Yes, ma'am. And I do have a few others, but I think those were the highlights of things that most people will be concerned about today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to Susan Bailey with Susan Bailey Incorporated, and following Ms. Bailey will be Patricia Orkera Kern. One moment. Okay, Ms. Bailey, you are on self-mute. If you would take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. And Ms. Bailey, you are on self-mute. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Okay, we will move on. Our next speaker is Patricia Orkera Kern. It indicates you have to put a pin, enter a pin so that you can unmute yourself. So, Ms. Orkera Kern, if you would put the pin in, and while you're doing that, we can actually move on to our next speaker, and I will circle back with you. Our next speaker will be Martha Cox. And it looks like Martha Cox has dropped off the call. So one moment. So our next speaker will be Jennifer Harris with Harris Support Services Incorporated. And following Ms. Harris will be Amanda Johnson, who's a waiver support coordinator. So Jennifer Harris, if you would take yourself off of mute. Oh. And I'm sorry, Ms. Harris, it indicates you are self-muted.
Good morning, everyone. I've listened to all the comments, and I do have some questions and comments. The first thing that I'd like to ask, because one person had alluded to this, was saying that APD had congratulated waiver support coordinators. But I have a question, as the whole language is contrary to the belief that APD want current support coordinators to continue operating. Because the language, you know, is so much, everybody's asking in this pandemic, why is it that we have, you know, there's a rush? We have 7 months left and the implementation of this must be done by July 1st. The next question too is the change that you are implementing. This change will be hard on WSCs to pay other staff members at a decreased rate. Why is it that WSC should be the lead in determination of medically necessary services, as agencies would place a liability? We would have a liability to the WSC and the agency. The determination of medically necessary services should be left to the primary care physicians or to others. You know, so these are my questions. Thank you.
The deadline of the July 1st, that is a requirement in the statute, and that would require a legislative change for that date to be modified. As to the question related to medical necessity, it's reviewing the needs of the individual based on their ensuring their health and safety.
Thank you. We will move on. Our next speaker is Amanda Johnson, who is a waiver support coordinator, and after Ms. Johnson is Kimberly Myers with ACS Suncoast. So one moment. Amanda Johnson, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. Ms. Johnson, you are unmuted, but we can't hear you, so maybe check your microphone. And again, Ms. Johnson, we can't hear you, although you are unmuted. I tell you what, we will try to circle back and get you at the end, maybe you can try a different microphone or a different device. Okay, we will move on to Kimberly Myers. Ms. Myers, you are unmuted. Ms. Myers is with ACS Suncoast. And Kimberly Myers, you are unmuted if you would provide your comments at this time. Okay, Ms. Myers, we will move on. Our next speaker is Natalie Greaves with Nurturing Independence, and after Ms. Greaves will be Manuel Achong. So Ms. Greaves, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment.
Okay, good morning. My question is that there needs to be an objective tool to determine which agency meets the requirements of a qualified organization, because the fear is that if the tool is subjective, it will lend itself to either implicit or explicit biases, and we don't want to leave that up to chance for if you have a previous relationship with either an agency owner or a previous support coordinator that's solo, if they're using that personal relationship to determine if this particular agency meets the requirements to be classified as an organized, qualified organization. Thanks.
Thank you. There will be like I said, the application itself spells out the documents that need to be included in the qualified organization application, as well as the additional policies and procedures. And as we mentioned previously, we're going to be providing templates to the qualified organizations that they can use for that process as well. The draft rule spells out what the requirements are to be a qualified organization. That will be the basis of determining the certification process for those organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next speaker is Manuel Achong. Mr. Achong, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you can provide your comment. And Mr. Achong, you are self-muted. If you could take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment. All right, we will move on. Our next speaker is Tricia Gareto, and following Ms. Gareto with Premium Support Services is Sonia McFarland. Tricia Gareto, you are self-muted. If you could.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Proceed.
Hi, it's Tricia Gareto with Premier Support Services. I do have quite a few questions, so I'm going to try to go through them quickly, but slow enough to where you can hear me, but I don't fall over the 2-minute timeline. I would like to know when the qualifying organization application will be available. I see that you have the forms listed online, but they're watermarked with draft. So when the actual application will be able to be available. When somebody else had asked a question asking if we had a specific W-2 requirement for employees, if any of them needed to be, 1 or 2 or all of them. And I know that Ms. Lynn had asked for possible verbiage on that, which my CPA says that we all qualify as 1099, but I don't have the specifics, but I can get that to you. On page 3, under number 8, section B1, if you are already an agency with a signed mid-waiver service agreement, I just wanted clarification that we do not need a new one in order to be included in the packet application, and that the one that we currently have as a current agency will suffice. On page 5, under number 3D, It talks, I just wanted to see if that was the same as the affidavit of good moral character. It specifies, let's see. And then on page 8, under number 1, under 65G 14.0043, it talks about how if a WSC has been working for less than 12 months, they must follow the agency mentor program, but it doesn't specify how long the mentor program needs to be, which I know might be tricky because you have to check off all of these requirements, such as the 9 face-to-face visits and the meeting with the regional and the state office. But perhaps if a timeline was given for that, it would be easier for people to accept that they can't have a full independent caseload. And my next question in regards to that was what constitutes an independent caseload? Maybe instead of using the word independent, we can change that to say that they can have a caseload as long as their oversight has been given under the APD approved mentorship program. Because what's the point of an APD approved mentorship program if they're not able to work cases? On page 9, number 4, it talked about the regional meetings, and Ms. Lynn did say that that was going to be, oh no, I'm sorry, this is a different meeting. It says meetings with agency, including the regional office and state office meetings, which occur while the mentor is or mentee is participating in the program. Who schedules those meetings? Is it okay if they are a group meeting? For example, if you have 3 mentees in your program together, are they able to be held in a group? And I guess, is there a specific topic or agenda that needs to be discussed in those? Let's see, on page 9, number 8, the level 2 training, it says is the only requirement needed to start the mentorship program, but currently they have to be held in order. You need to do level 1, the state training, before you can do level 1, the regional specific training, but it says in this document that you only need the level 2 training in order to start the mentorship program. So that goes against what's currently in the guidelines. And I know that we talked about what the level 1 and 2 trainings are, but when are they going to be offered and how often? So for example, right now the level 1 is an independent teacher and they tend to offer them monthly. And I know that that's going on to train, but currently APD doesn't have a specific schedule for its region specific training. In our region, it happens to be approximately quarterly, but is there going to be a specific schedule of when those are offered so we know how to arrange that? On page 13, under the subtext of L, WSC notes and progress notes. Oh, that's about the satisfaction survey, and there is a fine added to that. So I just wanted to make sure that the only requirement was that we document that we gave them the information to participate in the satisfaction survey. However, there would be no fine given if they chose not to participate in it. And my follow-up question to that is, are we going to have access to those results since they are completed online on the APD website? On page 16, subset DD is when it talks about an independent caseload for the mentee program. And I guess my question was, what constitutes the word independent? And are they able to have a caseload as long as they are being monitored under the APD approved mentorship program? Another question that I had that wasn't specific to anything in this document was, I hate to use the word ownership, but I guess currently if a WSC works under an agency, that consumer, that individual belongs, for lack of a better word, to the agency. However, now there's going to be a lot of movement and things are going to be much more fluid because everyone's going to have to join an agency. Once that happens, who has, I'm trying to think of how to word this, that individual's caseload, does that stay with the agency if that WSC chooses to move? Or if that, so for example, if an WSC is with agency A and has 40 consumers and they decide that they are going to move to agency B, do they automatically get to bring those 40 cases with them? Whereas in the past, those individuals are under the umbrella of the agency and not the specific WSC. So is there any verbiage or clarification as to how that is going to be able to play out? So that we know and we have more of a clear-cut answer as to whether or not, obviously it's individual choice and they have the ability to follow their WSC wherever they go and which agency they go to. But I know in coming up with you know, topics and discussions of WSCs moving and changing to agencies, I just wanted to make sure that as an agency head that we knew moving forward what we can plan on. And that is the last of my questions.
Thanks for your questions. In the interest of time, I'm just going to touch on a few of them. I was trying to quickly write down what your questions were, and I was not able to record all those. So I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to respond to your questions. So would ask that you would also submit those in writing to the agency so that we can make sure that we do respond to all of them satisfactorily. Just a couple of questions that you did ask that I did want to touch on. When the application will be available, you're right, there is a draft application online currently. We wanted to get through the workshop today. As I've indicated before, we're doing some training for the regional staff, and as soon as that application is available for you guys to submit to the regional offices, we will post that as a final application, as well as we'll send out notification to all the support coordinators. We certainly understand that you're anxious to get those applications submitted, and we're anxious to get started on reviewing those applications as well, given our time frames we're working under. One of the questions you also asked was if you're an existing agency, is your existing agency application sufficient to be a qualified organization? And the answer to that is no. There is a new, as you'll see on the website, there is a new application specifically for qualified organizations. And once a qualified organization is certified, there also will be a new Medicaid waiver services agreement specifically for the qualified organizations. You asked a question about the satisfaction surveys and the potential penalty associated with that. Just for clarification, the requirement for the support coordinator is to inform the individual about the opportunity to complete a satisfaction survey, but you're certainly not penalized if the person chooses not to submit a satisfaction survey. The penalties associated with completing the satisfaction survey on behalf of the individual, and of course it needs to be independent. If there were so many other questions, I just want, in the interest of time, we've got other people to ask questions. We would just ask if you could submit those wonderful questions in writing to us so that we can respond back. That would be very appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Next, we will move on to Sonia McFarland. I believe Ms. McFarland, I can't recall if you had already provided your comments. You are self-muted. Looks like you registered twice, so we may have already gave you an opportunity. Ms. McFarland, if you'd unmute your line, you can provide any comments that you have.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote some of my comments, and a group of support coordinators and I are planning on coming together. We review all of the items, and something is going to be sent to you or has been sent to you. One of the questions or suggestions is that support coordinators that will be joining together have the opportunity to be on a 1099. The other one was that we have many years of experience, and we would like to see a language where we're going to be grandfathered in without the need of the initial training that we had already had. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland. Ms. Dahl, did you have any response?
The question of the 1099 versus the employee, we've discussed that previously, that the current rule language is silent on that issue. In terms of the grandfathering in, for any support coordinator who is currently enrolled with the agency, support coordinators will be required, all support coordinators will be required to complete the level 1 training, which again will be an online training available through Train Florida, and complete the competency assessment, but will not be required to complete what is now referred to as region-specific training, which will now be called level 2 training. There will not be a requirement for existing support coordinators to repeat the level 2 training.
Thank you. And now we're going to circle back with the individuals that I said I would. George Font, you are unmuted if you'd provide your comment. And Mr. Font, you're unmuted if you provide your comment. Mr. Font, we're having trouble hearing you. If you would submit any comments or questions to the agency in the notice of development, and I'll describe at the end of this workshop how to submit those written comments. That way we can move on. Our next speaker I want to give an opportunity is Patricia O'Cara-Kern. Ms. O'Cara-Kern, it looks like the prompt is having you enter the PIN so that you can unmute your phone. You've not entered in that PIN, so we will have to move on. And again, if you have any written comments or questions, it looks like you entered the PIN. So I will take you off. You are unmuted if you would provide your comment. Patricia O'Cara-Kern, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Maybe if you're muted on your cell phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. You may provide your comment.
Yes, good morning. No, I just really want to emphasize the difficulties in actually applying, going through the process in the mixed actually regulations, whether, you know, you have to have actually the 4 workers, you know, the 4 employees, and if you don't have to have them now, so it's kind of difficult to kind of, you know, go through the process. Also the fact that, you know, they cannot work, you know, even though if you hire someone, if they're new individuals, they're not going to be able to get paid for that time until everything else, you know, until you have the mentor. So there's a gap in payment for the individuals that would like to, you know, become support coordinators. So that's a difficulty with that. And also the trainings, I'm not sure if they're providing trainings right now, you know, like the training to become support coordinators. And, you know, I know the fee back then when I became a support coordinator over almost 19 years ago, if they're still charging the $650, which is, you know, that's a lot of money. And if you're going to hire brand new individuals, or, you know, that would be an issue. So I would like to have some feedback on that.
The current training in Train Florida is under development. If you are needing to hire a support coordinator at this point, you would continue to the same process that you do currently until that training is available and until the training rule is finalized. It would continue with the statewide training. There are still some individuals who are delivering that training. I did want to point out, when the training does go live in Train Florida, there will not be a fee associated with that for support coordinators.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to Amanda Johnson. Ms. Johnson, you are self-muted. If you take yourself off mute, you could provide your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. I just wanted to circle back. I know that we've said this so many times, but one of the considerations in continuing to allow, even though you said it doesn't say currently employee 1099 or W-2, that our job currently is 24/7 on call. And so if you are running an agency and employing that person and they take a call, you have to pay them for those hours. So you're constantly paying overtime call or rotating call. But we all know from when we back each other up, the best person to take that call is the person who knows the case. So it's a pretty critical part of our job, and it meets the definitions of the criteria anyway. So I just wanted that to be in the consideration, even if it's not in this rule, future rules as this continues to develop and grow. Because I think that's critical to the essence of the job and the quality of service that our individuals receive. And to that, that's my other comment. Most of my comments have been made by other great whisks on the line, and is that in the toolkit that you're giving the agency applications for qualified organizations that has been referenced, suggested timelines for submissions would be a great tool to give, because and it can have all of the non-committal phrases that we want to have, like our goal to process these things are this, but I'm afraid that there are going to be a number of actual qualified organizations that do this the wrong way. So if you think about you have to apply to be a qualified organization, and then once you're a qualified organization, you can hire support coordinators under your agency, but those WISCs still have to associate their number with you, which takes time. Meanwhile, the real issue, even though this is our job, this is our money, are all these individuals that we serve. So hypothetically, if I wanted to go work for an agency and not open an agency, and I was applying to an agency, I would want to make sure that they're qualified organizations before I started working for them. And if they didn't become a qualified organization, it means chaos for the people who intended to choose to stay with me come July 1st, which is the real crisis of shuffling cases and people just not getting what they need at the most critical time that we've ever been in this.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Johnson. And next, that is all the pre-registered speakers that we have. We will move on to written questions that we've received already. The first one is, my agency has a new waiver support coordinator. She signed her contract with APD on August 17, 2020. She received her first case in September 2020. When this rule goes into effect in July, how will this affect her since she has been working with Broome Support Coordination Incorporated since August of 2020? Will this rule apply to her? Will she have the mentoring program to continue waiver support coordinator services or be grandfathered in as a waiver support coordinator?
The draft rule language says that if a person has been a support coordinator for less than 12 months prior to joining a qualified organization, that they would participate in the mentoring program, yes.
Okay. The next question is, when is the training start for the statewide training?
And again, that's currently under development. It's being finalized at this point. And as soon as that is available, we will certainly let support coordinators know. In the interim, anyone that's requiring training would continue to access that current, what we refer to as statewide training, through the certified trainers.
And I did want to make note that there is a workshop specifically on training relating this chapter 65G-10 scheduled for this coming Monday, the 23rd. A waiver support advisory number 2020-041 was issued out. It does have instructions on how to attend that workshop. That was issued on November 10th, 2020. The next question that we received is, Since APD has 90 days to approve, disapprove, and answer on the qualified organization application, will there be a cutoff of applications?
APD will continue to process applications as they are received. There are specific timeframes in the proposed rule for the submission of those applications, as well as the requirement to get those applications in a complete form for them to be processed and reviewed. It's important to remember that we want to make sure that by July 1st, 2021, we do have the qualified organizations established, as well as the individuals associated with those. And that's why as soon as the application becomes available, we really would encourage those existing agencies and those SOLA support coordinators who are wanting to develop into a qualified organization, or providers of other services who may want to become a qualified organization, that they submit those applications and the associated documents sooner than later, so that we have time to review those sufficiently and to get feedback back to the applicants for any additional documents we need, so that we can go forth for planning purposes.
Next question, have any current existing agencies already been deemed a qualified organization?
No, we have not started the application process. And as I'd mentioned earlier, existing agencies will need to submit a qualified organization application, as would anyone who was not an existing agency who wanted to form a qualified organization. So no, there are currently no qualified organizations that have been deemed at this point.
Great. And I did want to note for the record, the time is now noon, which is when the workshop was made to cut off. However, we will finish out the written questions that we have. We have several more. The next question is, when does the agency intend to provide the example, code of ethics, policies and procedures, etc.?
We will have those ready and available at the point in time that you can submit those applications. So again, if you choose to use those templates, you certainly can do that with the application.
Okay. The next question is, how is employment defined, W-2 versus 1099? And there's been significant comment on this already, Lynn.
I think we probably already responded to that particular question.
Okay. Next question, is the owner going to be considered a waiver support coordinator to make 4, or do we have to have 4 plus an owner?
The owner would be considered one of those 4 if that owner does plan to serve individuals on a caseload, then they could be considered one of those 4.
Great. Next question, are agencies allowed to hire new waiver support coordinators at this time while we wait for pre-service to be implemented through the Train website?
Yes, absolutely. Until the training rule is promulgated, you would follow the same process as you do currently when you're hiring new employees. They would either get their training through the agency, if the agency has an approved trainer, or through those statewide approved trainers, just as you do now until the training rule is promulgated.
Okay, next question. What is the requirement for agency owner caseloads? How many consumers are they allowed to have?
The size of the caseloads for owners is actually indicated in the handbook. There's no change to that related to the qualified organization.
Okay, next question. How does APD plan to conduct 6 regional meetings for waiver support coordinators to attend, since the majority of the Southeast region meetings have been canceled due to the pandemic?
Those meetings are considered to be the region meetings that they have every month. Of course, we're in some, kind of interesting times now as it relates to the pandemic. There have been some regions that have begun conducting those virtually as opposed to face-to-face. And there will be probably some more information about that related to the training workshop as well, in terms of the training requirements for support coordinators.
Okay, and the last written question we have, will there be something to direct waiver support coordinators how to transition their current consumer caseload to their new agencies?
It would be the kind of the same process that we have now with if we have a solo support coordinator that wants to join an agency. The individual clients will be given an option if they want to continue with their support coordinator that they currently have, or if they want to be given a packet to choose a different support coordinator. So if they want to choose stay with the support coordinator they currently have, they certainly can do that.
Thank you. At this time, we are out of time, so I want to thank everyone for their participation in this rule workshop. Again, the agency will accept written comments pertaining to these rules until close of business, 5 p.m. Eastern on this Friday, November 20th, 2020, at the email address and the notice of development. That email address is danielle.thompson@apdcares.org. Comments received after this time will not be included in the record. The workshop is now concluded. The time is 12:05 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for all your attendance.